Hello and welcome to Never Is Funny, the show where I, Patrick, talk to funny people and hope to God they talk back. This episode is the final of the series, and to cap off what has become, specifically, an Edinburgh Fringe series, I've managed to score a very exciting guest. Darrell Martin is the owner and manager of the comedy club Just the Tonic, and if you know the Fringe, you know that name. He's a really interesting guy, and I wish I could have squeezed in more of him, but also he physically ran away at the end of the podcast because he was so busy, so it was probably for the best. Just to give you an idea of Just the Tonic's caliber, they spotted and promoted Sarah Millican, Jason Manford, Ramesh Ranganathan, Joe Richardson, and Jim Jeffries. This was a really interesting one for me to record, and it's a very different type of perspective to what I normally get to share on here. So, sit back, relax, and I'll pour you a glass of Never As Funny gin with Darrell Martin Tonic. You lucky little listener. Welcome back to the show, where I talk to comedians in the know. That's right. It's Never As Funny. It's Never As Funny. It's called Never As Funny. It's the name of the show, by the way. Never As Funny. That's the gist of it. The name. The show's called Never. This is like the title music. It's called Never As Funny. All right. Welcome back to Never As Funny, everyone. This week I have excellent special guest, Darrell Martin, who was once kicked out of a pub for saying "well, hey" too many times, which I'd love you to elaborate on that. The too many is interesting to me because I'm not sure what the bar would be for that.
Yeah. It depends how long a story you want, really. So I'll try and edit it down a bit. I was in the bar that I run in the Caves.
Yeah.
A lad came in that promotes now for a big company called Phil McIntyre. They produce loads of big events, and he used to work for me. And we kind of had a thing where we'd kind of go "way" a lot and "way" like that, and sort of cheer him. And he came into our bar, and I hadn't seen him for ages. Like "way" like that. "Way," did all this "way" of drinking and go "way." And people that were working with him, who I'd worked with before I came in, were all going "way" a lot. And then we kind of just sat down and had a drink. And then a bit later in the night, we met up again and we did "way" a lot. And then, actually on that evening,
yeah,
I think it was quite early on the Fringe. It was a bar that Just a Tonic run, but the bar manager didn't know who I was. So the bar manager came over because we were making loads of noise. "Way," and this bloke came over and said, "You can't make this noise." And I went, "I think I can." He went, "You can't." I said, I can. Everyone went "way," and then I went, "You do realise that I run the bar?" And he went, "Oh, sorry." And then he kind of realised who he was. And he went off anyway.
Oh wow, that's a hell of a move.
Yeah, that isn't when we got run out. So anyway, so later on in the night, we ended up in Bannerman's, which is kind of on Cowgate, and it's over the road from the Just Tonic in the Caves. And we were sitting there, and I can't remember what happened. And there was probably like about 10 people in the bar. There's hardly anyone in there. And and something happened. We both went "way" again, and went "way." And then we sort of like looked at everyone else in the bar and went "way." And we ended up getting like about sort of 10 people shouting "way" a lot. And this bloke, the barman, came over and said, "Look, can you stop making a loud of noise?" And I went, "Well, we're only shouting "way." He went, "Well, I've already asked you to stop making noise." And I went, "Well, you haven't." And he said something like, "Well, you need to stop making the noise." And I turned around to everyone in the bar and went, "Whatever you do, don't shout "way" in this bar because they'll throw you out." And we all went "way," and the whole place went "way" again. Everyone "way." And we just got a drink. And then we went. And then this bloke, "I've told you already, stop shouting "way." And I went, "What? So we can't even cheer in the bar? Because I know you're disturbing the customers." And I went, "Well, I think everyone's joining in." And we got everyone to shout "way" again, right? And then he sort of went off at one for no reason whatsoever, started having a go at us again. And started saying, "You have to drink your drinks up and get out." And I went, "Well, I've just bought the drink." And he said something like, "Oh, you have to drink up and get out." So we kind of walked towards the bar, and I turned around to everyone and went, "Hey, everyone, whatever you do in this pub, make sure you don't get happy and shout "way" because they throw you out." And everyone went "way" again. And the bloke went, "Right, give me your drinks and get out." And I went, "Okay, you can have your drink," and threw it over him. And right, we all went "way." We all cheered our heads off. And the whole bar went "way" like that. And we sort of walked out shouting "way" a lot. And as we walked off under the bridge that's just next to it, and someone, I don't know who it was, someone from the pub ran out and started having a go at us.
Oh my God.
And I just laughed at him. And he jumped up and headbutted me.
Oh, Jesus Christ. What fucking hell?
I just turned to my friend and we both went, "Way!" I laughed and walked off. We were very drunk. He was funny. It was very
I was not expecting the twist of brutal violence. Yeah,
it wasn't brutal. He was very small. And he had to kind of jump up and headbutt me, but it was just funny. It was more funny than anything. But yeah, it was. Yeah. So when you go to Edinburgh, don't shout "Wahey" in Bannerman's. They've probably got a different land now, but
excellent advice, Troy. I guess that's brilliant.
Don't be celebrating too much. You go to Bannerman angry. You don't like. There's no joy allowed in Bannerman's. You've got to be an angry rocker.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, that's a great introduction. When you're not shouting "Wahey" and getting headbutted by tiny leaping men, how would you describe yourself? Like if you're like, "Oh, I'm Darrell Martin and I'm blank. This is what I do." I mean, you mentioned just the Tonic and the caves and things.
Yeah.
To someone completely new, maybe even someone who doesn't know much about Edinburgh Fringe, what would be your go-to self-description?
I think it depends. You've got depends if you're the bloke in Bannerman's or if you're depends who you are. Depends what kind of month you have in relation to what it says. I run Just the Tonic venues. So Just the Tonic is a kind of brand which we sort of mainly do comedy. So I run comedy clubs in the UK, and then 20 years we've been doing Fringe venues, all kind of grown quite organically, and we're not one of the big ones and we're not one of the small ones. We're sort of in the middle, sort of trying to keep it kind of fringy and not too corporate, and trying to keep it fringy and not too disorganized and like some of the free ones. So we're kind of in the middle. So we're sort of mainly comedy venues, but we've kind of grown organically. We've sort of had big names coming through, and I'm kind of top of that bit really, and we've got a sort of big team that helps run it all. But
yes,
I would say that's a brief description.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is your guys' 20th anniversary, right? Yeah,
so 20 years of doing stuff at the Fringe. I've been coming to the Fringe more than that and been involved in running shows at the Fringe longer than that. But actually, we kind of established a venue in 2004. And that was just by chance, really. I'd been taken up to Edinburgh to compare a show in 2000 by a bloke called Pete Harris, who was running a venue called Cafe Royal, which is now the Voodoo Rooms.
Okay.
And he had a show in it called the Big Value Comedy Show, and he just sort of selected 8 acts that were put on over 2 shows, and he kind of selected newer acts from around the UK comedy circuit, and I managed to convince him that I was good enough to compare in 2000. And then in 2002, he kind of just sort of jacked it all in and went off, and I was recommended to program and to run these big value shows.
Right, wow.
Venue. So the landlord had changed at the venue. So Pete had a really good relationship with the original landlord. And I think when that landlord left, Pete just had enough of it all and had left for various reasons. And they'd gone to live in Thailand. So I kind of took it over, and they had new landlords in there. And so I ran that for 2 years as a big value comedy show. And I just booked myself in that because it was really late. I booked myself again to do it. And a few new acts. Jim Jeffries was one of the acts that we took first of all, and in that year, and I can't remember who else was in that year, but he's the one that's now famous from that year.
Yeah.
And it was his first time in the UK, actually. And then I did it again the next year. And then the year after that, basically at the end of that year, the people that were running the pub, as an Australian woman and a Scottish bloke, they kind of said, "We're going to go under, probably do a runner." If I was you.
It's brilliant. It's like some kind of sitcom.
Yeah, if they said, "If I was you, I'd buy all of the equipment from us," because the whole room was all curtained off and it had all the lights and sound stuff. They said,
"Right,
if I was you, I'd buy all the bus, so they've got no choice but to use you again in next year because you've got all the equipment." I went, "That's a good idea." So I gave them something like £500. Basically, they were just flogging off what wasn't theirs because it wasn't even theirs. I think it's part of the pub, but I took all this stuff with me. And then the next year, the pub basically did a runner, and by Christmas it was shut. But I was trying to negotiate taking the pub on for August, but the landlord wanted it to go fully. Anyway, I cut it short. It ended up being taken up by the bloke that run backpackers in the room above, like in the room above it. He didn't know what he was doing, but also he was a raging alcoholic. And I didn't know this. I went out to have a meeting with him. I went to Edinburgh to have a meeting with him, and he wasn't there, but his wife was there, and she didn't have a clue about Edinburgh Festival. And I didn't really know a lot about Edinburgh Festival. I produced this show for a couple of years. I'd been in the show, And I'd been out flyering for different comedians. I'd fly for Sean Locke and I'd fly for Jim Owen and Rich Horn.
Oh, right.
And done tech work. So I'd sort of from the ground level up, I was kind of, but so anyway, so I had this meeting and I didn't go with any intention of becoming a venue runner. I just went in to take this big value show up. And the good thing about the big value show was that it was a real high volume of audience members and there was 2 drink breaks in there. So I knew the value of the turnover to the bar because most Fringe shows are like an hour. In order to go in, probably about a third or a half will get a drink.
Yeah.
And so you get a turnover. But this show, they kind of sold it. Your first drink is discounted. And then there was 2 breaks in there. So it was a 2-hour show. And that happened twice. So there was like sort of...
Oh, right.
There was 6 hits to the bar of 132 people. And it normally sold out. So I knew there was a value to it. So anyway, so I went to this meeting. This woman was clueless. And she was coming up with ridiculous figures of how much rent she wanted. And I was just going, well, I don't know where you get that figure from. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't pay you that. I want, and I went, well, I'm not doing it. And then I just started asking her questions and sort of just ask, and she didn't even know what the Fringe program was, didn't know what the Fringe Society were, didn't know how to run a venue. And by the end of it, and this isn't advice on how to negotiate anything, because I was basically slammed the table, a hand on the table, went, I'm not bringing my show here because you haven't got a fucking clue what you're talking about. And I'm not bringing my show to you because I haven't got any confidence in this running. Right? I just walked out. And then it was actually a heartfelt comment. And it wasn't a negotiating tactic. It was just like, and he's clueless. And not for any fault of her own. She'd just been dumped there because her husband was an alcoholic and she'd been there to front it.
Yeah.
So the next day, I got a phone call from my husband and he said, I hear the meeting didn't go very well. And I went, yeah, you could put it like that. And he said, well, what do you want? How can we make this work? I said, well, we can make it work by me running the venue. You having nothing to do with it. You just take the bar money and I'll just book the rooms out. So there was 2 rooms in the space. And I said, I'll just bring a load of shows up. So I had no desire to do it. Didn't know if I could do it and hadn't even thought about it until this phone call. And he went, okay, well, how much do you want to pay? And I said, well, your wife was just making up figures. This came from nowhere. And he went, well, how much do you want to rent? And I pay. And I just went, I made up a figure. I can't remember what it was. And he went, okay. I went, really? And he went, yeah. I went, okay, all right. Okay, I'll do that. So then I had to go out and find.
Oh, brilliant.
I then had to go out and find, so probably 7 shows to put in this 60 capacity room. And then some other shows to put in the afternoon. There's one I had the big value one. But I was a comic on the circuit at the time. So I was kind of in touch with lots of people. And also, because I knew what I had to pay, and I didn't have to pay any more than this, I just went out and just sort of said to people, well, if you give me this much, you can have a room.
Right.
Great is really cheap rooms. And all I knew was that what the big value comedy show could bring in financially. So that was covered. And then as long as everything else just covered the costs of the rent, and so I gave these shows out to people. And sort of in the first year or 2, we sort of had Josie Long come up and she got nominated for an award.
Right.
We had all sorts of stuff going on. It was really good. And it was real because I was really sort of, there wasn't any cheap venues at the time. It was way before Free Fringe. There wasn't the £5 Fringe. And so there was a really cheap option for people to come up. So you had to really graft it because where the venue is, I don't know if you know the Voodoo Rooms, but they're kind of, there's no footfall really. You're kind of hidden around a corner. So we had to kind of go out and get people and drag them over. And so you really had to work it. But it was a really nice sort of atmosphere. And I was sort of very young. I guess I was like 26, 27. I'm so into it. And the acts we got were all just into it. And it was a good opportunity. And accommodation was cheaper then. So if you came up and did it, you could go away with quite a bit of money and also had a good show. So it grew out of that really. But then 2 years later, I think either the second or third year when I was there, when we turned up to set up for the Fringe, and the bloke had managed to run the pub so down the hill. Basically, what he did was he had a backpackers upstairs, and he let backpackers come down. Nothing against backpackers, but he let them come downstairs and use it almost as like a common room, as a social room. So you go in there, and there'd be loads of Spanish guys going, playing streets of London, and all the regulars just fucked off. And also, it came in with a smoking ban as well, so everything was against them. But it was full of backpackers drinking orange juice. Yeah. And he got rid of the regulars, so it just went under. So I think within 2 or 3 years, when I came up, he was desperate to give me the rent because he had to pay off his creditors, which were the brewery, before he could get another beer delivery. Right. And he basically he made a lot of money off my big value shows, probably kept going a bit longer, then it all went under again. And then we sort of floated around for a couple of years, and then we got the caves, and then it kind of went bigger then.
Right, yeah.
I grew out of that. So that was 20 odd years ago, and it was a lot smaller operation. And it was a lot more fun to operate, to be honest. It's now bigger and it's more stressful. And
yeah, I can imagine. I'm curious about, this is possibly sound like a rude question, but when you started, I mean, you said that, you're in the Big Valley Show as an act, and then you got put on to Compare, and then programming and stuff. Would you say you knew what you were doing? Because that seems like, you said you were in your early 20s. Had you had much experience doing that kind of thing before?
well, no, I've definitely made it all up as I've gone along. But I started running a comedy club in 1994 in Nottingham, and that's kind of where I started from. That's what I was doing. And I did that because I wanted to get into, I loved comedy since I was a small child. And I wanted to be a comedian. I didn't know how. And there wasn't, like, comedy's massive now, but it wasn't then.
Yeah.
You probably had stuff in London, and there was something in Manchester, and I started this club up. And I'd worked in a nightclub, like a really good nightclub in Nottingham called Venus, which was an amazing nightclub. I'd worked in a pub, and I'd helped promote stuff. When I was at tech college, sixth form, I'd organised a few events. So I'd kind of made stuff up as I'd kind of eked my way in. I'd worked in pubs and things, and bars. And at university, I'd gone to a lot of comedy, and I knew what I liked in comedy. And then when I started my comedy club up, I kind of managed to do something really good, and I didn't know how good it was until I started going up and doing stand-up.
Right.
I realised that I'd created a really good club in Nottingham because I was a bit of a party animal, and all the actors would have lock-ins and all that, come back to my house, and I'd kind of created this sort of thing that people wanted to play, but also I knew how to manage an audience. I'd kind of worked it out. I would chuck people out as soon as they started talking in shows. I sort of managed the room, made it good for comedians, and because I was doing stand-up, I knew what I wanted from a room.
Yes.
And so that kind of happened, and then I promoted in Edinburgh. So I'd gone up in, like, a year after I started the comedy club, I'd gone up with Avalon, who were a big agency, and I'd handed out flyers for Sean Locke and the Comedy Zone. I'd teched those shows. So I'd kind of been involved in it. Then I'd gone up with another management company and flyered and teched for another few shows. So I'd kind of seen what was going on in Edinburgh. And then I'd been in the big value shows. So I did kind of know what I was doing, and I knew how to set up tech equipment. But then I just learned, you just learn, really. And so a lot of it was intuitive, and then you just sort of, but as it gets bigger and bigger, as you scale up, it's the scaling up that gets difficult, because you're used to just doing it all on your own or with someone else. I'd led Joe, who's on and off working for me now, but he worked for me for a long time. We kind of just grew it, scaled it up. There gets a point when that's the difficult thing, because you have to let go of things and then trust other people to do stuff. And so, like, the other thing, for example, was that probably for about like 3 or 4 years, we were loading up a couple of Luton vans, doing 2 or 3 runs up and back from Nottingham, from our lockup. And then I don't know how, but we sort of realised that you could just put things on a pallet and wrap them up, and big lorries would turn up and pick them up. It cost 15 quid a pallet, and
it's magical.
And I just went, well, I don't know about that 4 years ago. I didn't have the knowledge of it, because
of course.
Started off with me and my mate with a carload of stuff we bought from the people that are shutting down, and turned up with a bag of spanners and some soldering irons, and just sort of set everything up. And it's going to grow like that. And you have to every now and stop and go, surely there's a better way of doing this, which is, it kind of happens like this year. We've completely changed how we've done everything, and we've made everything a lot more methodical, because you get to a point where your old way of doing stuff is clearly messy, but it was good for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
So not knowing what I was doing, I didn't know what I was doing, but I think I'm kind of aware enough of the needs of a show and what an audience wants and what a performer wants to kind of
definitely
piece it all together and not have a ramshackle mess. One of the things that amazed me when I started doing stand-up in other places, so I'd started this club up in Nottingham, and I had literally just kind of like gone, this is how I want the room to be, and worked it out.
Right.
And I did it as an inroad for me to do stand-up, and I ended up doing a course in London at Jackson's Lane, which I think is still there. It's probably still running courses, but I did that, and then I sort of had the bottle to then go out and do open spots in places. And I couldn't believe how crap some of them were. Like, you turned up places, there would be like a speaker on a chair, and a lead like 3 foot long, so you kind of shackled to this. You can sort of like I don't remember the shop Tandy, like with a Tandy brand on it. Just like you wouldn't even use it to announce to shout down in the water at the front there. It was that bad quality. And you'd be going, hello, and there'd be, the audience was made up of comedians that were just getting paid a pint to be on it. It was just like, And you go to all these gigs like that, and you just go, why are you doing this? If you can't even get an audience, you're not a promoter. And so I then realised that what I'd managed to do, because I worked so hard to make it work in Nottingham, and the reason is because I had to have a proper job. And once I had an opportunity to work in a comedy club, I was determined to make it work. Because
Yeah.
it was either that or some other shit job. You know, there was a recession on at the time when I left university, and there
Yeah.
was just nothing about, and so I kind of just desperately clung onto it, and that desperation is what made it work, really. I think.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious because you mentioned when you started doing with Cafe Royale and then floating around, then doing just a Tonic. At that point, you were still doing stand up yourself like simultaneously, which that sounds like a pretty incredible balance. When did you start to slide towards, right, like this is, I want to be a promoter, I want to run just the Tonic, this is my place?
I don't think there was ever a conscious decision. It was more I was kind of forced into the situation because the problem with the little world of comedy, and it's probably the same in anything you do, is you kind of get people's perceptions of you are kind of like, I wasn't allowed to come out the corner of being a promoter. So
Right.
people knew me as a promoter and they saw me as a promoter. And so I was just, he's a promoter that wants to do stand-up. Well, actually, what it was is I was someone that wants to do stand-up that started promoting as a way to get it to do stand-up. But
Right.
I was really good at promoting because I wanted to put on a good show. And I did that for so long that once I then got the bottle to, because I didn't have the confidence to do stand-up, I didn't know what to do. And I was terrified of doing it because that reason was I was probably one of the biggest piss takers I've ever come across. And I would take the piss of everything, everyone. It also included myself. So I was like this negative voice in my head about what I was doing. So I would just talk myself down all the time about how shit I was, you know.
Yeah.
So it was terrible. And also I was promoting in a town where there was no other comedy. And I would go around on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, promoting around all the pubs to put on this Sunday night comedy club. And so I was having to face anyone that came into that club had basically been handed a flyer by me.
Right.
So to then go on stage and be absolutely shit in front of people. And I had the level of comedians it was such a high level of comedians. It was a Sunday night. There was nothing else on in the country really. So I was able to book Ed Byrne, Al Mack,
Right.
Vegas, Peter Kay, Ross Noble, Daniel Kitts, all these people, these
God, yeah.
amazing lineups. I mean, at the time, they weren't as big as they are now, but there was still real high quality shows. And then to be shit in the middle of that, you looked really shit. So I'd kind of paint myself in a corner really. And then once I started branching out and doing stand-up, I kind of did it, but I didn't really have the inner confidence to throw myself in it properly. It's a bit like the way I've described it before is if you go on a high diving board and you run up to it.
Oh, yeah.
And if you lose your bottle at the last minute, you belly flop. And I always lost my bottle. I'd lost my bottle. And I was always fucking things up and I was making excuses to not write material and stuff. Anyway, so I went off for ages and it got to a point where I supported Johnny Vegas on tour, supported Ed Byrne on tour. I was doing all right, but I was just banging my head against the wall and getting into comedy clubs. And then the conscious decision for me, at the point I kind of gave up, I think. Well, I mean, I had kids. There's only so much time you can spend away from home when you've got kids. I ran the comedy night as well. But I did a gig in North London and I turned up expecting just to be comparing a normal gig. But it changed since I originally got booked. And it was now a warm-up for, I think, one of the episodes of the first series of Live at the Apollo, or it might be the second series. But on the bill was Ardal O'Hanlon and Omid Djalali. And there was a queue all down the road. And in the audience were going to be the open mic production team, like a massive big production team, and Addison Cresswell, who was the head of, he's died now, but he was the head of Off the Curb.
Oh, okay.
The best agent, really powerful bloke. I absolutely shat myself. Totally shat myself. But I had a really good gig, and I'll always admit when I had a shit gig, I had a really good gig. That Archie was going, oh, you remind me of Sean Locke, you remind me of this because of the way I talk and everything, you remind me of this, you're funny, but we'll give you some gigs. Well, you won't, because they won't give me a gig because they just see me as a promoter in the office. And he said, will you ring up and you tell them that Addison says, and so anyway, I did. With great joy, I rang up because I knew I'd picked me off. And this is nothing to do with them. This is more to do with my own sort of, I'd given up. I rang them up, talked to them to give me a gig. They went, okay, gave me this gig. And that was really poorly attended. I had a really shit time. Yeah. And then I just didn't call back. I just kind of went, oh, I've just had the biggest agent in the country saying that they give me some gigs. Yeah. And it fucked up. And I just went, oh, I can't keep doing this anymore. I can't keep trying to sell myself. I can't keep ringing up comedy clubs going, oh, I'm really funny. Yeah. And also my comparing style was really sort of loose, and it still is, where I just fuck about with the audience. Yeah. And it probably hits 90 to 95% of the time. But that 5%, if they don't like me, they fucking hate me. And then when you're comparing, because you're going on and off the stage, it's really difficult. If I hate you and you go back on, you're going, oh, here's that dickhead again. And it's awful. And so I just kind of went, oh, I can't do this anymore. And I just eased my way out of it and just stopped trying. Right. So now just compo my own club sometimes, and I just go on and just take the piss out of people, and I get away with it. But I don't really. But once I'd relaxed on that, I was a better stand-up because I wasn't so hungry. I was so desperate and wanting to do it.
Right.
That kind of got in the way. I was too nervous and anxious. And it was really weird. Once I psychologically let go of it and didn't give a shit, I was more me. It was
Yes. Yeah.
quite strange, really. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I think we're coming towards the middle section of the show. But yeah, after break we'll be back and I'll ask you some more about Just Tonic, especially now. But yeah, before we do that, for the song I use in the break, do you have a specific song in mind?
Yeah, I did. When you asked me, I thought of this one, and I haven't thought to change my mind, but this is a song that I wanted played at my funeral, and it's by Captain Sensible, called Glad It's All Over.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And if you hear that middle section and there's no second half of the podcast, then pay some respects, I guess. Hello, and welcome to the last middle section of this series. A swan song, a requiem, a funeral dirge, if you will. Speaking of funerals, Darrell Martin is gonna die one day, and several days after, however long the process takes, I guess, he will be carried into the next world by the song Glad It's All Over by Captain Sensible. And, well, someone has to carry the torch. So, to get ahead of the curve, I will take that torch from you, Darrell. With all of my guests, I have proved I can do what they can, and so it is that the promoter, Darrell, becomes the promoted Darrell Martin. In between the lyrics of the song, I will be promoting Darrell to further his career. You guys know I like to help out the little guy. Sarah Hester Ross was just a TikToker before my podcast got her a Las Vegas residency all those weeks ago. Everything you are about to hear is a true fact. Submarines in the harbor. Incognito. Submarines of your dreams, not mine. The red sky must take the prize for giving to the people who never go to war. We're glad it's all over. Martin once saved a child, dying from cardiovascular disease, with the power of laughter. From a single joke, the child laughed so hard that they suffered a heart attack and passed away. Thus, they no longer had the disease. A sainthood was offered for this miracle cure, but Martin turned it down. "I'm not a saint," he said. "I'm Darrell Martin, the funniest man in the whole world." Hidden tunnels, secret items, guarded fences, planet Earth, testing ground, right now, the blue moon. When Martin started Just the Tonic in 2004, he had only 2 rooms to work with. To a lesser man, this would be a challenge at a festival with so many comedians, all of them needing an audience and all of them insufferable. But genius struck. Each room had 30 seats, so, with plywood boards stolen from the floor of the neighboring pub, he constructed a grid of walls, turning the 2 rooms of 30 seats into 60 one-seater rooms. Not only that, but nearly half of them sold out. Knows that soon we'll be searching for the people who never went to war. We're glad it's all over. Martin has promised to hand over control of Just the Tonic to me in a legally binding contract. He said to me, in a heartfelt moment by the fire, "If I ever tell you that I don't remember offering that to you, it means I've gone insane. Section me immediately. If I resist," he continued, handing me a loaded pistol, "then you know what to do. Put me down, Pat. I'm stronger than you. If I go rabid and you give me the chance, I will kill you. Remember this, my son, and Just the Tonic is yours." The red sky must take the prize. The red sky is giving to the people that never go to war. We're glad it's all over. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. What was the song called? Was it Thank God It's Over?
Glad it's all over.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad it's not over. And I'd like to begin the second half by presenting you with a little hypothetical, which is, say Fringe 2025 is coming up. In that time, seems likely I've become a rich and famous comedian, and I've got my pick of the clubs at the Fringe where I choose to go. You've been hunting around, you came across the podcast, you heard some skit on it, you're like, oh, this is the funniest thing I've ever heard. Get Jamoyne off the lineup now, we need this guy. And you drop me an email. How would you advertise just the Tonic? Like when you're looking for comedians, you should come here.
I'm not really a salesman, to be honest. So, yeah, I haven't really got like a pitch. I've got these rooms. Do you want to come and do it? It's quite a strange hypothetical thing, really. So I kind of, if I didn't already know you, I'd be approaching you. And if I knew you, I'd be going, all right, Pat, want to come just Tonic this year? Got this room. You can sell some tickets and I'll talk to you about it. I wouldn't really.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like I'm kind of like cold calling people on the phone. The way shows come to us is kind of people and agents will apply to us directly, and we'll kind of sift through those and sort of look through them and make various assessments of suitability for people. We have shows that come back each year, and that's kind of growing because for various reasons. And then we also go out to people that we know, which is what we're talking about. But it's normally people that I actually know rather than kind of. Yeah, so I know that other venues kind of consciously look at what's selling tickets in what spaces and try and get all those people. And I don't really do that. It's not through laziness. It's, maybe it is laziness. But it's just the way it's grown. I don't know. And so if you were a successful, famous comedian, you'd probably have changed your phone number. You wouldn't be answering my calls because you don't need my gigs anymore. And you'd be fielding me off with your agent. So I'd be talking to your agent. And then when the agent was responding, I might send you a text message going, oh, do you want to do, you're interested in Dead Fringe? So there's sneaky ways around it. But yeah, I haven't got a cold call pitch that I can offer you, I'm afraid. You either want to come to just a Tonic or you don't. And if you don't, then we don't want you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. One of the things that I found is if early on in this sort of like the selection process we're going through, is if we find people are quite difficult or quite demanding or rude, then we go, no, thanks. Because it's a really intense month.
Yes.
So we've got 200 shows in total over the Fringe, and that's over, some of them are on for the whole run. And it's a lot of egos to deal with, a lot of people. With pop-up venues, so there's a lot of times things can go wrong. Tech issues, box office issues, you got everything's temporary, so things go wrong. We're also in sort of rooms that are built in the rocks and then under the arches of the bridges, and there's all sorts of things that go wrong. And the last thing you want is someone that's just really needy and demanding for no reason whatsoever, being basically a dickhead. And wheedle some of them out. There's some people I just wouldn't want to inflict on my staff for a month. Yeah, of course. Because they'll just, they're not reasonable. Some people just aren't reasonable. Anyway, so I'm not really answering your question. I'm going off at a tangent, but so if someone doesn't want to be with us, then I don't try and trick them in. Yeah. I guess to put it another way, possibly a better way than the original insane question. What do you think? Because obviously people do reach out to you and do very well and keep growing. What do you think would attract you to a comedian or a stand-up looking to come to Fringe? There's a variety of things. There's obviously, I kind of like finding someone that's new and exciting, and I kind of like to see things that are a bit different. There's been, it's not all the time, but there's been cases when I've done exactly what you've asked me to do. I've talked someone to come into just a Tonic because I really like what they're doing. And I think it's brilliant, and I kind of get excited by it. And so, like, one example is that a bloke called Dr. Brown. I don't know if you're aware of him. He's kind of sort of quite clownish. And I would say it was in the time of YouTube clips, so it must have been quite recent, within 6, 7 years, I don't know. And anyway, and so one of the things that sometimes I know comedians, sometimes I'm just looking through applications and looking at what they're doing online, and you do a bit more of a search from what they send you, and you go off down a tangent. And I just got sent this clip by this quite a strange clip. It was just a bloke standing in front of a speaker being an idiot, and it made me crow with laughter. And so I sort of like actively was trying to go, I think you'd like to come here. It was kind of quite, he didn't respond very quickly, considering that he'd applied. You'd think he'd respond.
Yeah.
And then after quite a bit of me constantly badgering him, I think his manager got involved, and then it sort of got somewhere. But then it was getting right towards the end of the application. Well, the sort of when you could book to get into the Fringe brochure, and I was just sort of really hammering trying to get it in. Then on the last day, they went, "Oh yeah, we think we're going to come." So I forgot. So I had to then move my own in-house produced shows around. I think I basically took 2 weeks out of the big value show and squashed them in the middle, or squashed them at the end, or something like that. So I managed to put him on, and it was absolutely brilliant. I was so glad I did, because it was an astounding show, and it was one of the ones that's talk of the festival, one of the talks of the festival.
Oh, right.
That was absolutely brilliant. But what was annoying was that one of the people that I talked into coming to see the show was someone from the Soho Theatre. He came to see it. He then the next year produced someone else's venue. So that's quite annoying. So loyalty is quite good.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to say what you're looking for, because anything original, I won't be able to describe what it is that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So it's not always just original. It's a lot of the time you're turning people away because they're maybe not experienced enough, and you're not doing that because, oh, you're rubbish. Just like, well, you're coming to our venue where you have to pay to use the venue, you have to pay for the facilities, and you clearly haven't got the experience, and I'd just be exploiting you if I kind of let you come here, and I'd also probably be giving you a hideous month. Right. And you'd probably got a lot of money, and you'd very good chance you get depressed, and you might give up comedy. So you kind of, there is a lot of editing out of people for that reason. There's also sort of, we've got people that we work with regularly that want to come back, so we kind of have to work around what they're doing. I can't really do it's. I can't define what I'm looking for. I'm not being very answers, because it's a very vague process. There is no method in it.
It definitely makes sense.
And I'm talking to someone at the moment about potentially getting someone else to help with the programming, because at the minute it's all on me, and I'm old, and I'd like some younger eyes on it, really.
Right. Yeah.
But that's the reality. Is I'd like some younger eyes coming in and having a look at what's going on, because what I don't want to do is become. I don't think I am. It's all young, new people coming through, but I'm not going to gigs as much as I used to. Yeah, it's an age group, and we need to be represented in a younger age group, basically. So that's going to change next year, but it'll still be the same sort of vague process of balancing up who's going to come. I can't answer this question.
No, that you did a very good job with it, considering that. I guess in reverse as well, like, what would you like to think makes you and just the Tonic attractive to people? Like, I mean, you mentioned things like here and in other interviews as well about having it be kind of affordable and keeping a nice environment and stuff like that. I mean, are those your main things? Like, what would you kind of hope people pick you for when they're applying?
Well, one of the things is longevity, isn't it? We're established at the Fringe, and I only became aware of that, I'd say about 6-7 years ago, when someone said to me, "Oh, all the time I've been coming to the Fringe." Someone I'd said, "Oh, you can have a slot," at whatever it was, and they said, "Oh, all the time I've been coming to the festival, I come to Just a Tonic, and I've always wanted to play in Just Tonic venues." It kind of made it, and that was a bit of a shock to me, because it's very difficult to see for yourself from outside what other people's perception is, and I'd always just seen this as kind of like in my mind, the Fringe isn't with Just a Tonic. It's a really weird thing to say, but it's because I started coming and there was no Just a Tonic at Ed Fringe. My Ed Fringe, it isn't as Just a Tonic an establishment thing, but if someone's in their 20s, well, we've been here for 20 years, so we've probably been here all the time they've been growing up. So there's longevity. I think we've got really good venues. The venues are good, and we look after them, manage them quite well. We're small enough to have good staff that it feels personable. I think if you come to Just a Tonic, there is the chance to kind of know everyone that's working there. So I'm around most of the time. All the heads of the things are accessible. We're not kind of these distant people that are kind of hidden behind a wall of employees. You always see me wandering about, and I'm pretty much still hands-on, making sure everything's working, and I will respond to people if there's issues. So we're kind of small enough to not be part of it, feel like you're in a big corporate world, but also kind of big enough to make sure most things are produced properly. Yeah. So I think we offer a really good balance between a well-produced venue and it not being astronomically expensive. And also, if you're good at promoting, if you've got a show you're good at promoting, then we do what we can to make it so you can get bums on seats. So what I mean is, if you're in one of the bigger venues, if you wanted to just comp your show, because some people just want to have people to come and see them. All you want is people to come and see you. Right? So you pay your money, you come up, you get an audience. if you're in a venue and only getting like 20 people in, you want to be able to comp your show and get bums on seats, because word of mouth is the best advertising there is.
Yeah.
And so to do that, you want more bums on seats. So we let people comp as many as they want without trying to charge them. Well, one of the things that happened to me, I produced Josie Long in our venue for 2 or 3 years, and then we went up to one of the bigger venues. I won't say because I'm not particularly going to criticise them. But it was one of the other venues, and we were just kind of letting people in. We're just giving that away comps and just sort of, because it's Josie Long. I was like, because I didn't read the small print in the contract, basically. And then at the end of the festival, we were charged for all these comps going in. We were like, why? There are empty seats. They well, you're only allowed 2 per day or something. I was like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we ended up having to pay the venue for our friends going in. And I just found it ludicrous. So we kind of just sort of relaxed on that. We also do the pay what you want model, which is where audience members can buy tickets in advance if they want to guarantee coming in, or they can just sort of come in for free if there's any seats left, and then on the way out, like in a bucket. And that's really attractive to like newer acts, I'd say, because Fringe is expensive. And if you're an audience member and you don't know who someone is and they're charging 7 or 8 quid a ticket,
who are
you going to take the gamble on? Whereas it's not so much of a gamble and you go in for free, and if you like it, you give them some money on the way out. So it kind of allows people to experiment with newer acts without it costing a fortune. So there's that sort of thing, which works really. And if anyone's watching this, they do go to pay what you want models, do put some money in, because it only works while people are. Right. And I've stood and watched some shows that are pay what you want, and like 50% of the audience go out without putting any money in. I just think that's insulting to the person you just sat through. Unless if it was awful, then fair enough. But to have a good show which is sold out or full up, and you go out without contributing any money, and it's just rude, really. Because that performer isn't just there as your sort of slave, but there that's someone that's invested money and time into putting the show on, and effort, and also someone else probably could have had your seat that might have put some money in. So we're kind of fringy in a way. We're not really big corporate.
Yeah.
Difficult to know, but I'd like to think we're kind of like a more fun. I think we're still fun to be at, and we're a bit more personable, I'd say. I hope. I don't.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, does that just continue to naturally be the case, or does it feel like something that gets trickier to balance as you kind of grow and take in more rooms and things like that?
Well, it's definitely different to when I had 2 rooms. I was definitely there. I was running it. I was sort of like, I was actually handpicking all these performers, but you can't do that anymore. But I think we changed the management thing because, I said earlier on that things grow and shift and you can't do that model anymore. We've changed it so that I have been more, say in 2022, which was chaos because it was post-Fringe, everything was a mess and staff weren't trained. That was a mess. And last year was a bit of a mess, and we completely changed our management structure. So this year, I would say I'm probably more hands-on or more present than I had been in, say, 2019 and 22 and 23. And that's something we're going to continue with. And everyone that's been with us this year has said how good the communication is with everyone and how good we are being in touch with everyone, because I've kind of just changed how it's all done, and everyone's a lot more engaged with the audiences, because it was for a long time, it was still me carrying quite a lot of the load.
Yeah.
So you couldn't be on top of it. Now the acts kind of get to know who the management staff are a lot earlier. The communication's a lot better. So I do think you feel more part of it. And another thing we did as well is we reintroduced, when I started off at the K's, we had these big launch parties.
Right.
And I'd give away huge amounts of free booze and get everyone absolutely hammered. And it would be staff and performers mixing it. And the problem with that was the next day, loads of our staff would just have hangovers and wouldn't turn up and stuff. And it really annoyed the lad that was like the head of operations. And he basically moaned at me so much that I just went, I can't bother this anymore. So we didn't do that for about 4 years, I think. And I really missed it. And this year we kind of we didn't do it on the night before the opening thing. And that was because we had an issue with one of the get-ins, because one of the venues was sort of double booked. So
okay.
We had to work around something. But I think that sort of, we just gave away a lot of free booze to performers and the staff. And I think that sort of getting everyone to mingle and get hammered for free kind of helps.
Oh, definitely.
So we brought that in this year, and that will be done again next year. And it's something that I missed really, because it felt like that was something that Just the Tonic did. And I think it's very easy to take away things that are important to people that you don't realize how important they are. And what because they make something that was important to me, but I allowed other members of staff to talk me out of it. And I'm glad that I kind of just put that back in place and put my foot down this year. And I'll do it sort of better next year. So I think that just a kind of like a big piss up to get everyone to know each other.
Yeah, definitely. I can really vouch for it because I went to the one this year because I came up for a couple of days.
All right.
And yeah, it was a really nice experience. I mean, it was like last minute I found out I could come up to Fringe to do like media stuff. And I came on an overnight coach and like I came on an overnight coach. I changed in the coach station bathroom, managed to shower in my accommodation about 20 minutes before it was due to start, and I ran there. And I was generally pretty terrified, especially because I live in rural Wales. And so for the past few months, outside of kind of family and close friends really, and these calls with guests, I basically haven't done much social interaction.
Right.
So I was running into this like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm like prepared for this. And then I went and it was just immediately very nice. I mean, being presented with free drinks helped a lot. But yeah, being able to go in, just like say hi to a few people. I think his name's Raoul Coley, one of the performers you had, just came up and was like, hi. And we had a chat and that was great. And it was just a really nice environment. And I think that made a big difference for me coming up, let alone what it would be like as a performer.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so what we did in previous years, we'd put out 2 tables in. Basically, it's quite nice. My sons are running the bars this year, so I kind of just I gave them the booze to do what you want with it. But I said what I would normally do is put 2 tables in the room where the DJ was, where the stage is. I'll put 2 or 3 trestle tables there and just serve behind that to give away free drinks, because then everyone's in where the music is. And then once that's run out, then everyone can get drinks in the bar next door. But everyone's got hammered in this room and it creates out. And what they did is they just thought for organisation things, they would do it behind the bar. And when I went up to afterwards, everyone just crammed by the bar. And I said, look, you didn't listen to me and I wasn't going to tell you what to do. But the reason I did that in that room was so that everyone was in that room. So it naturally built where the music is. And what you've done, you brought everyone into the bar and no one is in the dance bit. And no one likes to be in a dance floor, dancing in the room when there's no one in the room.
Yes.
And they weren't, what you mean? But one of the things I used to like doing was because I was the bloke running it, I would stand there and give all the drinks away. So I'd just be like free pouring all these gin and hand them out and just throwing empty thing behind your back. It'd be a real mess. And it had a kind of chaos to it that was joyful. Yeah. That's what I really enjoyed. And it was nice walking into the space and seeing my sons and a couple of their mates. And they had bought themselves black sunglasses and black shirts to do it all. And they just doing that chaos and seeing everyone clamoring for these free drinks. And it was quite nice to see it replicated. But letting them kind of, I'd have been like some old duffer behind the bar and it wouldn't be quite as good. And also, I kind of hung around a bit, but then left because I wanted the staff to enjoy themselves. Yeah. And I know from being, working for places, when I was younger, that you're never going to enjoy yourself as much when the boss is hanging around. So right. I just sort of showed my face and said hello to a few people and just kind of sneaked off so that all my staff could get hammered and do those things you do when you're drunk without worry of me maybe, not that I would frown, but just in case people think that you might frown, I just...
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Everyone to it. But yeah, that's one... It's a really nice thing to be able to just kind of go to everyone here. Thanks for choosing Just a Tonic. Have a big piss up on us and enjoy yourselves. Yes. So yeah, how do we start talking about this?
Oh, not a massive idea. Oh, I think I asked you just kind of what the vibe was really, I guess, of Just the Tonic. I guess as we approach the end, before we get to the sample kind of section, are there any like acts or comedians or whatever that you're particularly considering we're towards the end of the Fringe now have been very excited about or that have like surprised you in any way?
Connor Burns has done really well this year. He's an Edinburgh-based comedian. He was with us last year in Atomic, which is 110 capacity room. And last year we kind of put on, I think he sold everything, and then we put on 5 extra shows in that room, and then we put on 3 extra shows in that 300 capacity room. And he sold pretty much every ticket. And this year he's just gone straight into doing the 300 capacity room. Yeah. We can't even find enough space for the extra shows that the demand that he's got.
Right.
He's doing that well. So I think we've got like 3 or 4 extra afternoon shows. We had one show cancelled because someone set fire to one of the bins in one of the toilets. Oh God. And someone had a sleeping bag in the toilet, and put a cigarette out in a bin full of tissue. So the show got abandoned. And so, yeah, so he's done really, really well. I'm not surprised because he is really good, but I'm surprised. I don't suppose I'm really surprised at how many tickets he's sold. I'm just pleased. But we've had Scott Bennett, who's a comedian that I've worked with for years. He's done he's a really good stand-up, but he's also done a show which is about a medical thing that his daughter was diagnosed with very young and had to go abroad and get treatment. He's managed to combine quite a tragic story, but with lots of jokes. There has been a trend in Edinburgh to do some tragedy things and sort of forget about being funny, but he's combines funny with a really sort of heartwarming story. And that, I'm going to see it. It's my wife's birthday tomorrow, so I'm going to go and sit with her tomorrow because I think she'll like it. But that has been a nice revelation. And then we've got Alfred Brown on, who was sort of cancelled on the circuit a few years ago because of a historic YouTube thing that got popped up, and he was a bit silly, and he used the N-word and trying to do an intellectual way of using it, and he kind of got sort of basically, you know, they will pile on social media, and he got piled on, and loads of gigs cancelled, and he came back to us. I know his agent really well, and she asked if he could do he did a small run last year. He's come back this year with a big run. That's doing really well, getting quite a lot of critical acclaim. It's nice to see. It's nice to see someone resurfacing because, you know, he's not a racist man, and he got tarred with his brush because he was just, I wouldn't say clumsy. I would say he was trying to do something that he maybe he could have done it, but I don't know. But if someone captures you if someone films you when you're trying to experiment with some material, it's quite unfair to then go and post that on social media.
Right.
It takes everything out of context. And it also, when someone's working out some material or trying to work something in, it's not always the end product. Yeah, you're filming someone. It's like someone doing an apprenticeship and they're learning to be, say, like an engineer, and you go in and you film them and they're trying to do some machining, and you film just smashing tools up because they've got speeds wrong, or they've just I'm giving you some analogies because I was trained to be an engineer when I was younger, so I had something. but it's basically like going in and filming someone while they're learning.
Yes.
And so he was doing the material and trying to get something right, and he got some stuff got posted, and then everyone comes in and, you know, like we all shat in our nappies when we were babies. It doesn't mean we all pull our pants every day. And I just find it annoying that people are so willing to sort of just jump on things. And, you know, the minute we got Reg Hunter up here doing, you know, he had an incident at the same, Paul Curry happened the same in the Soho Theatre, where something happens in a room and it all gets blown out of proportion in the intensity of that moment, and it gets blown out of proportion, and it just causes havoc for people. And there are people on social media who are quite happy to annihilate people for the wrong reasons.
Right.
Anyway, it's nice to see Alfred Brown sort of come through the other side. I think of some other stuff. It's quite difficult because we've got 200 shows in to remember who's standing out and stuff like that. But we have got, what normally happens is you don't hear about things unless there's problems.
Right.
Well, we haven't had loads of problems, so I haven't got any of that issue. But yeah, so anyway, that's enough for that subject.
But yeah, no, that's great. I mean, to see people bounce back is always good. And yeah, I've seen stuff about Connor Burns around. Was it Connor Burns? Did I get the name right?
Yeah.
Excellent. Going around. I'll see if I can keep an eye on him in the future. But yeah, normally at this point in the show is around when they play like a sample of the guest work. Do you have any clips from YouTube you could sling my way?
I'd like to say yes, but unfortunately I have to say no.
Right.
And the reason is that I probably stopped doing stand-up before the YouTube stuff came along. And then and all I've ever done since then is compare, and all I do is just go on and take the piss out of people.
Yeah.
And I never really thought that was something that was worth sharing on YouTube. And then all of a sudden Paul Smith came along, and he's kind of, it seems to have and I don't really want to show those clips of me because I can be quite brutal to people, quite horrible. Right. And I wouldn't want that to represent me because and I'm not a whore on so I've got nothing of me. So there's nothing to show. If you want to see anything of me, you have to come and see me live. And the only place you can see that is at just the Tonic comedy clubs around the UK.
Oh, very nicely done.
Obviously advertised. No, but there isn't actually anything on YouTube, so I can't give you anything. And the only thing that's out there, the only thing I've got is of me when I was 24 or 25 and 26, and I was in the final of the Open Mic Award. And I was in the final when it's filmed, and I'm hoping no one ever puts it on YouTube. I'm like terrified. I look like a little boy, and I've got a all done up, right Fred Perry on. And I'd kind of changed my material about for this competition because I got an agent that it didn't make sense. So material I've been doing for 2 years that I knew inside out, I changed it before the show. And basically it was awful. And I wouldn't show you that. I'm going to tell you this is that if you're ever doing stand-up, don't listen to advice from anybody else.
Right.
including this and me. But I was going to go on with an opening that I think would have been brilliant. And I never thought I was going to win that final because I knew I was up against. I knew there was better stand-ups than me. But I was going to go on and start with this. And I think I wouldn't have won, but I would have gone down in flames and it'd been great. And I got talked out of doing it because someone said it wasn't very professional. And I've never been professional. So I don't know why I worried about it. So I was going to go on and go, oh, it's nice to be in this competition in the final. I'm glad I've made it. It's quite strange being judged by people. And I always wondered who judges the judges. So, I'd like to give my comment on the judges. Let's say Caroline Hearn, great characterization, 9 out of 10. Charles Foote is great article, 7 out of 10. There was someone else I can't remember. I was going to go 6 out of 10. And Gary Bushell, what a cunt. And I think that Gary Bushell would have laughed his head off. And I think the audience would have laughed their head off. And I don't think I'd have won. It probably wouldn't have got on television. But it would have been notorious. And it's what I
Oh, it would have been great.
And I didn't do it. And that is my one regret in stand-up is that I listened to someone else at a point when I could have hugged my, whatever is it, colours to the mast or whatever, and I didn't. And I bottled it, and I changed my material around. I looked like a nervous little boy, and I messed the whole thing up. And that haunted me.
Yeah.
Because I had friends that saw it on television, and I was just like, oh, God. The whole thing awful. Can I go now?
Yes, of course. but good to see that bit revitalized here, though.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, just before you do, just a quick, plugs and things. I know Just the Tonic has social media, stuff like that, or if there's particular events of any kind you'd like to share.
Okay, right, let's do what people do when they sell themselves, like whores at the end of a gig.
I thought you said you weren't one. I can't be
I know,
me like that.
You've asked me to do it, yeah, so we're on Twitter, but I never use it. I think it's shit.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not giving Elon Musk any. So you can look on Twitter, but there'll never be anything on there. We've got a YouTube channel, which isn't used very much, but we are on Facebook, and each club we've got has got their own Facebook page, and we're on Instagram. So it's like, we've got a Reading one, Leicester one, Nottingham, Birmingham. We'll open a club in Whitechapel in September, every Saturday in Whitechapel. Yeah, that's got Spencer Jones on.
Oh,
and
right.
Gary Delaney. We've got some big names there. Sarah Pascoe. Anyway, and we've got Nottingham, and we've got a general, just a Tonic one. So just look up those if you want to, and come to the clubs every Saturday in many cities.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll drop those in the show note. And yeah, with that,
I need to run.
I've been Patrick. I guess it's been Darrell.
And
I'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, cheers, right?
And Darrell might see you
at a club near you.
At a club, exactly.
All right.
Potentially in Whitechapel soon.
See ya. Bye.
Yeah, see ya. Bye.
Bye. I'm going now. Bye.
Thank you for making it all the way to the end of the podcast. You can find the podcast on Instagram at NeverIsFunny. All one word, all lowercase. The music you'll listen to right now using the intro and outros. There it is by Kevin MacLeod, brackets Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license, creativecommons.org/licenses/by/4.0. The guest next time will be, the guest next, they'll be, the next guest, the next guest.
And on the pedestal these words appear: my name is Patrick, podcaster of podcasters. Look upon my works, ye comedians, and despair. Nothing besides remains round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare. The lone and level sands stretch far away. Then, underneath that is also said, follow Never As Funny on social media to keep an eye out for new episodes.